Cool. Hey, Joe,
Hey,
where are you?
I'm in San Francisco.
Okay. I normally live in LA, but I'm in London today, or London this month, actually. So, can you tell me a little bit about you? Because I think it's always interesting trying to work out new tech, like what motivates the person to do it. And you've got an interesting background for me that I want to go into District0x. Am I saying it right, by the way? Is it District0x?
Yeah, that's
It's got some quite, let's say, radical principles behind it. But I looked at your resume or on your LinkedIn, and like you come from you used to be a derivatives trader, you used to be in finance, and I'm like, oh, that's like a really different world. So I'm talking too much. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
yeah. So, actually dropped out of college a couple months in to start playing professional poker. I did that for about 7 years. Got to travel around, see a bunch of cool things. Lived in Macau for a while, Singapore for a while, Costa Rica. So, yeah, that was a good experience. During that time, if you're
Oh, well, let me go back. Actually, I've heard a couple people who have been professional traders, and also people who've kind of dropped out and traveled, and now you're doing what you're doing. Is that like part of the story, that you're not like locked, buttoned down, 4 years at college, come out, you're getting VC money from the guy who was a year above you at Stanford? I mean, is that part of the story, or is that coincidence?
I would say coincidence, although lots of people in this space tend to have a similar path, although I feel like I'm almost one of the older guys in this crypto space at the moment. So many of the kids are they should be in college at the moment, but they dropped out because they're working on really cool projects and they need to be in college. So yeah.
All right, so you were telling me about it. So you traveled the world.
Yeah, so during poker, there was an event called Black Friday, where if you are familiar with the online poker industry, if you lived in the US, essentially your online accounts and all the funds that you had in there were seized. The two largest poker sites, PokerStars and Full Tilt, were both shut down one day by the US government. And yeah, if you were a professional poker player, that was a pretty bad experience. Essentially, if you had your money online, most of your money was seized the next day when you woke up. So that whole
the US surprisingly has really strict regulations around gambling outside Vegas or outside a very limited way of being. And actually, do you know what? SEC regulations also around funding and crowdfunding, but that's another conversation. So sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, so that whole experience of someone else being able to just take your money, that was a kind of eye-opening experience. Came across Bitcoin shortly thereafter, and after reading the white paper, it's like, oh, well, this is something that would prevent that from happening again. You can actually control your own money, which that seemed really cool.
So were you already like a developer or a coder? Did you kind of understand the tech at that stage?
No, I'm still not a developer or a coder. I'm like you said before, I have a finance background. That's kind of how I got into the space. So yeah, I went down the whole Bitcoin rabbit hole like so many people tend to do after they first discover it, and decided I wanted to work for a company in the space. So I applied for Coinbase at the time. Them and BitPay were like the two only larger players in the space in the US. So yeah, applied to Coinbase, spent about 3 years there as an operations manager. And then last year decided I wanted to leave to start my own thing up. Started up a consulting firm called Sorcerers, who we initially were focused on recruiting for Ethereum-based projects. I was also working with helping out Olaf at Polychain Capital. He was just starting up, and I was helping with some early stage analysis and deal sourcing there. And chatting with projects on behalf of Polychain, we realized that a lot of them did need help recruiting, but at the same time, it was really hard to recruit Solidity developers because most of them were already working on their own projects, and they had a good amount of Ethereum, so they weren't necessarily money motivated at this point. So yeah, we
That's
saw
an interesting space for me, actually. A lot of people that are in this space made a shit ton of money by just putting in whatever it was, $10, $100 into like this brand new thing their buddy did that they heard a week before it started. And
yeah, I think at the time when the Ethereum crowd sale happened, I don't remember the exact price, but I want to say Bitcoin was between somewhere somewhere between $200 and $400 per Bitcoin. And if you put one Bitcoin in the Ethereum crowd sale, that would today be worth about 1.3 million or so. So pretty good return over.
It's a very good show. Just as an aside, then, what do you think about what's going on right now with the price of Bitcoin and also the mere fact that it seems to have broken through into the mainstream?
Yeah, I try not to get too caught up in the price action because it's very easy to spend your day sitting there watching charts all day, and especially in the crypto space, there's just so much action going on there all the time. So, yeah, I tend to try to focus on the tech actually being built behind the scenes. With Bitcoin, there's definitely some good stuff going on there, but the political divide between the community has slowed down the pace of innovation significantly. That's been going on.
You're talking about the forking in this time where basically, all right, I'm going to use really weird examples sometimes. So tell me, is it kind of like Soviet Union 1920 when the Trotskyites split off from the Leninites and it was all kind of these factions hating each other and moving, or am I being over dramatic?
It might be a little over dramatic, but I don't follow. I don't know. There's so many political divides or different niches in the community these days that it's tough to keep up. But yeah, so I don't necessarily think forks are a bad thing for cryptocurrencies. It kind of allows different groups to enact what they want to see pushed through and get to experiment with different things. But at the same time, it has stalled like the innovation that's been applied on the protocol level to Bitcoin. Whereas Ethereum, we've seen some quite the opposite. Almost the community is kind of very much so. They've rallied behind Vitalik as this sort of benevolent dictator, and Vitalik's been able to push through and get tons of different initiatives and advances.
Talking about Vitalik and the fact that you used to do recruitment, one of the really interesting areas for me is the fact that tech for the last 10, 15 years has been really dominated by California and Silicon Valley. And in the blockchain space, it really does seem like there's a hell of a lot of stuff happening in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, Nordics, Estonia, and a big amount of fintech in London. Am I reading it right?
Yeah, it's very much a global community. I'm based in San Francisco myself, although I would say a few months after being out here, I realized that I don't really need to be out here in terms of meeting with people in this space. You just need a Google Hangouts or Skype, and you're good to go.
Like this, yeah.
Yeah, my partner or co-founder at District0x, he lives in he's in Slovakia now, but he lived in Thailand for a large part of the year. So we were literally on opposite time zones, and yeah, worked out fine.
All right, I want to get into decentralized a little bit in a minute, but I think that's getting into the weeds, and it's like bigger picture. So just to explain it, I'm like you know a lot about the money side and the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency side, but what we want to try and focus on in this documentary is like a lot of what we're doing, especially what you're doing, can kind of change society, how we do business, the economy pretty fundamentally, and it's I don't know how to say it. It's like it's a mind fuck, basically. And I think most people just don't understand how the hell to get their head around it. It's too weird, and it's just too weird to even understand. So I kind of want to focus a little bit more on that side of it and what you're doing and how it might make changes. But before we dive into that, give me like a minute about what you think what's going on with the money. Talk to me about where you think cryptocurrencies are going, not necessarily in terms of price, but in terms of how they're going to start affecting the economy or affecting trades or affecting, like banking and those bigger issues. Yeah,
so, well, in the last year, we've seen the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance formed, for example. Now we have a couple of hundreds of the largest companies in the world all looking at ways to utilize this blockchain technology, whereas a couple of years ago, lots of people just shrugged this off as internet play money. So just that dynamic or that change in things in such a short period of time, it's kind of eye-opening towards where we're going. Where it's going to have troughs and peaks, of course, just like most technology getting adopted. we'll probably have a period like the internet bubble in 1999 where there's a ton of hype and people realize that it's going to take a little bit longer for all this stuff to actually scale out and become what it truly can become. Even as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we had an application called CryptoKitties on Ethereum take off, and it had a lot of success, more success than any other application on Ethereum yet, but still compared to an application that you might download on your iPhone and that's going to pop up in the iPhone app store as like a top app. It's nothing near that, but the Ethereum network itself couldn't handle it right now. So the hype might be outgrowing the technology to an extent, but it's all going to balance out. And yeah, longer term, I think
it actually is exciting, but hold on to your hats. But it is exciting. Yeah, the CryptoKitty things was interesting. I know you know a guy called Julian Bootaloo. And I've met him a couple of times. We just chatted with him literally, I think, an hour and a half ago. So I've got Julian fresh in my mind in the talk of CryptoKitties. All right, so maybe let's dive into District0x. And it's really interesting to me from two sides. One of which is what it is as a business and what you want to achieve, and number two, it's what it is as a business and how it operates and how it runs. So I think maybe we need to do that bit later. Describe District0x to me.
Yeah, so District0x is a network of decentralized marketplaces. When I say a decentralized marketplace, if you think about an Uber or an Airbnb or an eBay, they've really done a good job of harnessing the power of decentralization and internet and all the technologies that we've been afforded over the last 20 years or so. They've massively improved the user experiences of these sorts of marketplaces. They've driven down costs for consumers, but at the same time, decisions are controlled by a few people, typically private shareholders, and the profit potential is always goes to a few people, where it's the user base or the network itself that really makes these platforms valuable. So District0x,
So actually, let me go back to that. Just to what you said was clear, but I think sometimes people lose a bit, and I want to make sure I understand it. So, whilst people talk about Uber and Airbnb more being part of a sharing economy, it's not really, because it's not my brother talking to my sister. It's really everyone talking to the business, and it's like a fake peer-to-peer. They're kind of pretending you're talking to each other, but really you're talking to them, and they're the ones making billions or hundreds of millions. And rather than maybe if you're at a yard sale, you're giving money directly to the person without giving money to the guy. Okay.
Very much so, there's still a middleman.
Okay. Sorry, carry on. I interrupted you.
Yeah. So with District0x, we hope to kind of leverage the technology afforded by the blockchain and Ethereum, and also this new platform called Aragon. Which Aragon, if you're not familiar with it, it's really almost like an operating system for decentralized organizations.
All right, so I'm talking to Maria and hopefully grabbing her. So help me well, I think I've got it, but tell me if I've got it right. So blockchain is like the land we're on. It's North America, right? And then Ethereum is like the city. Ethereum is San Francisco City Council or something, or the land. And then Aragon is what? Aragon is like the infrastructure. Aragon is like they put the streets in and they put the lights in, or what's a good way for kind of, because it's layers, isn't it?
There's layers. I'm not sure that a typical government and land structure would be the best way to think of it. Almost more like a typical computer software stack, though, these days, where you have your servers, or say like Amazon Web Services as Ethereum or the underlying architecture. Then on top of that, you have, on top of that, in this example, you have Aragon, which Aragon is like the operating system.
Okay, and Aragon is like smart contracts, and it's the way you do stuff. It's the language you use.
It's a system of smart contracts that provide the tools that would be necessary to run an organization. So everything from a cap table to fundraising to voting shares to the ability to propose and vote on specific items, positions within the organization. All that stuff can be controlled via Aragon, and there's a set of smart contracts, and it's stored on the blockchain, so it can't be altered or changed unless everyone votes to actually change it.
All right. So Aragon is a foundation. It's a business. It's a not-for-profit business.
Yes, it's a non-profit foundation based in I believe, but yes. So if you want to think,
and then on top of that is you.
Yes. So then we're kind of like an application running on the operating system. So if you think about marketplaces that we're building, so eFlance being our first marketplace, which was it's like Upwork or Elance. It's a job market for just for freelancers. And then our second market that we launched was called NameBazaar. It's a marketplace for ETH domain names, so kind of like a .com registrar.
Okay. All right, so going back a bit, so we've got Aragon is like the foundations that you built on, and then you're building more stores, so the shopping mall manager and people can come inside and set up their stalls, or in a marketplace, right? You're like the market, yeah, okay. All right, so before we dive into the business, that's like a very, I don't want to say convoluted because it's the wrong word, because you're all helping each other out. So how does it work with you? You guys all interacting with each other because you're like separate businesses, but you're kind of relying on Aragon, but they're their own business, or are you kind of part of Aragon by the mere fact that you're using it?
Well, I don't know that business is the proper term. We're all.
Well, I need to unthink about using terms like business and profit. And
building open source software projects, which they all kind of act as valuable infrastructure layers for different people may be trying to do. Aragon's a valuable service for anyone looking to start up an entity and manage it. District0x is a service for anyone looking to start up a communal marketplace. Ethereum is a service for anyone looking to build a decentralized application. So,
so sorry if I'm going a bit stupid. I just sometimes want to understand it because I think for a lot of people it's quite a hard concept to grasp.
Yeah, the more so just like pieces of software that can interoperate and work together, not necessarily competing businesses.
All right, and I'm not trying to give you exam questions, but like legally, I know when you do Aragon, you set up a business, you can kind of create a business. Oh, maybe we need to have this conversation now, actually. So you guys are all decentralized autonomous organizations, right? Or not?
District0x, we have a Cayman Islands entity.
Okay, well, that's what I was trying to get hold of. So I know Aragon talk about you creating and registering a business on it. So that's separate from like like who you are legally. Like legally, you're a regular company, but this is the tech that you use to operate, rather than you being. Okay. All right. Glad I got that sorted out. Okay, sorry, carry on. Right, so you're not a decentralized autonomous organization, but Aragon is, or not?
So Aragon's a nonprofit foundation.
Okay, all right. I'll get there at the end, so thank you for holding with me. All right, so tell me a little more about District0x.
Yeah, so District0x is kind of rehashing some of what I already said. A network of decentralized marketplaces. So we hope to allow. And
do you own those marketplaces, or do you let other people build marketplaces on your platform?
So we have 2 marketplaces live right now that we've built as a team. We're starting on our 3rd one now. After that, the community can propose and vote on the next 5 that they would like to see built. Okay. And by that point, after we have those built, we hope to have our creation interface launched, which is kind of like a what you see is what you get style website builder, but that allows anyone to spin up their own communal marketplace, just like as simply as you could use in Shopify or. All right.
So what?
New subreddit.
And each marketplace is like a different sector, or can multiple people set up marketplaces that do similar thing, and they're just
Yeah, there's no restrictions on what people can or can't do. We have a district registry mechanism, which is used to determine whether or not people like our token holders would like to see a marketplace be considered part of our network. When I say part of our network, that would mean included in like our search functions, our network-wide escrow service, our network-wide directory, like network-wide application.
And that's kind of like how you you do your business, by running the directory, running these like support services.
Well, so we're not, back to kind of when you say business, not necessarily being the customer, but we're not seeking to generate profit as an entity.
Okay.
Building open source software, we ran a fundraiser to fund that.
Okay.
Yeah, now we're building.
Okay, no, it seems like the real way of the future, and that's why, we'll talk about the bigger economic pictures and how that works. I mean, I'm just saying I love the idea, but I just need to get my head around it, make sure I understand it, because it is different, and also a lot of, I think, in the past, things that are more like not-for-profits, they're kind of considered like charities, but really you're the basis of kind of major economic structure of people earning their salaries and livings, all part of the story.
I think a better way to maybe look at it, rather than a business or a charity, is a cooperative. So there's a good amount of examples of platform cooperatives at this point, which they operate almost like a business, but the stakeholders in it are it's.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, especially I'm normally based in California, but I'm in London. Co-ops are big here. One of the biggest department stores here is called John Lewis, where they give profit back to the staff every year. So I think here it's quite a concept. So kind of a really simple way of thinking about it is co-op on steroids. It's like co-op for the 21st generation, 21st century rather. Okay, that's exciting. And I'm trying to work out how it works. So if I'm like consumer, and like when your product's ready, is it going to be the equivalent of me? I know there's you consider yourself a DApp. Do I just go to like a store and I go to a District0x store, or I know it's like the new version of eBay called, I don't know, Joe's Store, and it's based in Aragon, and I just shop?
Yeah, I mean, so just like you would go to a normal web store, or how I mentioned our first marketplace that we have live is eFlance, it's called, which is a job board. You could go to that and check that out now just on your browser.
Okay, I'll do that. It's really interesting you say that as well. I was talking to a blockchain NGO in Jakarta, and I don't know if you're aware of these guys, but they're looking at trying to find a way that refugees can do micro jobs to be able to fund themselves, and they're trying to sort out the whole digital ID situation around that. So you're a co-op, and that plays through to how you operate, which I thought was really interesting. Just before I got on the call with you, you guys, I mean, look, our movie's called Radical Transparency, and we're kind of exploring it, and we're getting an idea that it's transparency for business and privacy for individuals. You guys are like awesomely transparent. You do this weekly list. You've got salaries and hourly rates up on your list. You communicate a hell of a lot. Is that like an experiment? Is that something, how you feel? Can you talk to me your thought process around it, how you got there, the how and the why, and like help me understand?
Yeah, well, going back to how these aren't really normal businesses that people are operating here, decentralized projects, I mean, like I said, they're more like a cooperative. So if you think about that, you want everyone who's part of this cooperative to have availability to all the information and know exactly what's going on at all times, so everyone can stay informed and make the best decisions possible. We just see it as a kind of natural evolution of how projects are being run these days. Is just the more transparency, the better. It just allows for more open community feedback. It allows the people who are your natural supporters to kind of just stay informed and keep in mind what's going on, which it tends to create them going out and sharing that information with others. So we've seen
I mean, it's good. So I don't want to give you a hard time, and if it comes across that way, I don't mean to. I'm like fascinated, and co-ops have been around for a while, and I think a lot of people are really used to privacy, and I think it's hard for people to get around. And I know some people would love it. I'm someone that was like the really shy kid back in the day when I was young. And it took me years and years to get layers of like being more open. But the more I do it, the better things are. So I get it. And, I don't know if you're aware, I'm trying to blog and putting these interviews up online when I'm doing the project. It's people are seeing it, learn, this movie change and grow and how I screw up the research on, going along. So that's all open. Do you think that's a way that all businesses would go, or not all businesses, let's say all organizations will go? Or do you see it as something that happens in some places, or what's like your more philosophical take on it and dream and vision?
Well, so I think, just over the past year, we've gone from seeing very few and like well-known long-running projects doing crowd sales to now at this point, there's some weeks we have over 100 crowd sales a week where lots of people don't know who these projects are. It's just too much to keep up with what's going on. So as a community, I think it's kind of necessary that we start looking at ways to almost police or regulate ourselves before regulators start doing that. Just because when regulators start doing it, it's typically done with heavy-handed policies, and it tends to slow innovation. There's the pace of innovation in this space it's amazing right now, so we don't want to see that stalled. So I think they're just naturally, what's the SEC's role? The SEC's role is to protect consumers, and it's to make sure that they have access to information that they're supposed to, and that there's not insider trading going on and all that sort of stuff that can harm.
Can I ask you a leading question? Do you think the SEC do really care about consumers, or do you think there's an element of them also protecting current business interests for the sake of, say, stability? I'm not trying to be too leading, but yeah. What do you think on that?
I do think a large part of their policies are designed to protect consumers. It's arguable how effective those policies are, the way they're enacted. I definitely think there's better ways to go about some of it. But I think the root of what they're trying to, at its core.
But you're based in the US, right? So SEC is your first line of regulation, but you operate globally.
Yeah, well, I think anyone who is selling tokens, if they're selling tokens to a US citizen, they have to consider the regulation.
Okay, all right. So you spoke about the different marketplaces. Obviously, everyone's going to think, oh, it's loads of eBays, but it's not, is it? I was reading about like a bank, like a decentralized loan service or credit scoring, Bloom, I think. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the freelancing platform, which I'm sure will, there's a need in the market for it. What kind of marketplaces do you envision, being, or what are the most popular things that people are voting for? What would you like to see happening?
The most popular marketplace that people are voting for right now is a fundraising platform, which would allow the community to fund interesting projects, and the early supporter of those would be rewarded more so than the later supporters. It's a really cool project. It's called One Hive. The second most voted district right now, it's Decentraland. They're building a virtual reality world, kind of like Second Life, but you can buy and own land parcels in there, and your land parcels are stored on the blockchain. It's actually like a ERC 721 token that represents a parcel of land.
And is that like another cryptocurrency, or is it actually meant to be a place to explore, or what's the thinking behind that one?
It has a token that's used to buy the land plots in their game. But yeah, the thinking there is very much like Second Life, just a virtual reality.
And One Hive would be like a Kickstarter, but you use Ether to kickstart projects or cryptocurrencies, or?
Yeah, it's like a Kickstarter, but with curation market aspects to it. And then, there's probably almost 200 proposals in our GitHub.
Okay. So do you know what I did before I kind of read up about you guys? I was always thinking, oh, how come there's not like a VC just doing co-op equivalents or public benefit equivalents of all the successful businesses for the blockchain? And I see you guys, and I'm like, okay, there's someone helping make that happen in a really authentically, in a very authentic, in a different way. So you're a decentralized business. This is very different. You've worked in finance in the background. How do you see this kind of affecting the economy, changing the economy? If you look 5-10 years in the future, I know you've got to be, you've got a responsible job, so you can't kind of just say lots of really weird stuff, but where would you hope things would go in 5 or 10 years? How would you see the landscape looking like?
At this point, it's still really uncertain what it's going to look like in 5 to 10 years. I think a lot of that uncertainty comes from the uncertainty on the regulatory side of things. It's still kind of yet to be seen how, when or if the government is going to kind of come in and start regulating things heavier.
Do you think that's likely? Because I've been out of the US for like 6 weeks now, and I know this market's changing. Are you getting a feeling that regulation is gonna, and obviously in Europe, everyone's talking about data protection. It's a very, more than I left Europe, I left here 10 years ago to move to the US. The markets were pretty close back then, and I feel like they're going in two different, really radically different ways.
Well, in the last 3 to 6 months or so, we've seen the SEC put out a couple announcements regarding crowd sales. Singapore, South Korea, China, lots of the larger jurisdictions were in terms of participants in the marketplaces. So yeah, we already are starting to see some signaling going on. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some more.
Okay. And what's, so, you sorry.
At the same time, I think the governments are quite keen on not wanting to drive out innovation. I think the SEC has done a good job thus far of not kind of hampering things. They've kind of taken a hands-off approach for the most part, and a couple of cases that we've seen them go after thus far, they've been, well, I think one was called Plexcoin. It was a blatant flash security. They were promising 1,300% returns within a month on their website and stuff. So yeah, stuff like that, like that's
a little bit of the Wild West. You don't want the good players to be thrown out with the bad, I guess.
Yes, exactly. So while there is some stuff like that, I think for every project like that, there's more, or probably 3 to 4 that are very, very well intentioned and working on very cool stuff that could someday be really useful for the world. So.
Okay, so look, the people who get technology that I've been speaking to all really rate you, and rate what you guys are doing. How do you see the next 6-12 months for you? I mean, what would you want to see to grow? Is it a slow, iterative, setting up another store, learning a bit more, setting up another district,
yep,
and being iterative, or is it like what's the future for you?
Yeah, so we're starting a 3rd marketplace right now, and then the community will vote and decide what we're going to build for the next 5. So we're viewing that as an opportunity to, well, we don't know what we're going to be building, so it's an opportunity to get a wide variety of different types of markets, and it will be a good opportunity to put our framework to the test and sandbox it and make sure that it's general purpose enough that by the time we're ready to release our creation interface, hopefully by the end of 2018, early 2019, that by that time, it'll be general purpose enough that anyone can build whatever they want. So
it's basically like you're building something there, something there, something there, and between it all, your system will become more robust. So
we have lots of modular components that can be repurposed. So as we're building out, we'll have lots of components where almost like building blocks, they can be reassembled to make new marketplaces.
Okay, and so you're not an organization, you're not a business in that traditional sense, or you're not a business in that traditional sense. Are all the businesses built on top, or all the entities built on top of you? Are they all co-ops? Do they have to be, or can people set something up that is like as commercial and as whatever, however they want to say it, as commercial as they want?
Yeah, so it's open source software that we're building, so anyone could fork in and use it to build whatever they want, really.
We also mentioned, I'm not trying to catch you out or anything, but you also spoke about building trust. Is that, do people have to obey by rules to be on the platform and use you, or is it like it's open source, so once they can kind of fork and go into a different place?
Yeah, so they can fork and build whatever they want using our software. How I mentioned, we'll have a registry component that's used to dictate who gets access to the directory or network-wide search and all that sort of stuff. That's used to kind of incentivize people to use our token as the token to stake to the marketplace to decide how voting rights are going to be allocated and all that sort of stuff to ensure that it stays open participation. And also to ensure that we don't have bad actors on the platform. So something like something super malicious like human trafficking, for example, I think everyone can agree that that's bad. We don't want that on the network. Even though it's decentralized, we have a mechanism to keep that stuff off of what everyone else sees. So there's no real mechanism to that's one of the things about this technology. While it is very powerful, with power comes, I mean, there's a need for responsibility. So yeah, it can be used for ill intent purposes, but we have.
Okay. It seems like quite a few of the people I'm talking to, I think you're the third one in the last few days where there's this talk about, you know, the old way was about putting hard rules in, but everyone that I can hear, you know, is talking about kind of trust and trust networks, and you can't ever guarantee something's 100%, like someone can't break into a room, but you create trusted people and only let trusted people around. Is that really what you guys are doing as well? Is creating and almost using gamification, I guess? So it's using people's inherent human desires to help build a stronger system.
Well, yeah, if you think about, I mean, our tokens, which kind of represent a stake in this co-op, well, just naturally, you're going to want to prevent stuff like that from coming on this platform because that would detract from the value of the platform. You're going to naturally want to support stuff that would add value to the platform. So it just creates a virtuous cycle where, yeah, people are, whether or not it's driven by greed, it's people's greed can all be aligned to people coordinate and work together for the same shared goals. So
I must admit, all the people I've met so far on Blockchain will not. Maybe I've been talking to around NGOs, but everyone seems to have very altruistic reasons, like, yeah, we've got to earn a buck, but let's do it in a good way, which is nice. And just on the business side, are you guys intending to grow organically and make money? Do you think at some stage you're going to have to get funding? I don't know. It's not really relevant to the film, but I'm just intrigued.
So how we did our initial fundraiser was we reserved some tokens to do potentially 2 more contribution periods if needed. Right now, just with the increase of the price of Ethereum, we currently have like $28 million. So we have like 30 years of runway at the moment based on our current burn rate. So
you're not a big team, are you? You're like 10 people or something.
We're only 7 people at the moment. So yeah.
That's a lot of change for not a lot of people that you guys are creating.
Yeah, and we stay pretty thrifty thus far. We don't have a very high burn rate, so yeah.
Okay, so look, you obviously know this space really well, and I'd love to get your insight on like the bigger picture. You obviously, maybe let's not jump too far. You've spoken a lot about Ethereum, and it's the thing that we're building on. Is Ethereum going to be the basic building block of all of blockchain and all of this kind of 4IR economy, or is it one tool out of like 10 that's going to be out there?
It's really hard to say. I don't think that I think there's going to be many different blockchains that people utilize for different purposes. I don't think it's going to be just Bitcoin or just Ethereum or one blockchain to rule them all. Lots of different, well, like with Ethereum, for example, the scripting language that it's written in, or it's similar to JavaScript versus something like Tezos is an example. I think their language is OCaml, which is more of a functional programming language. It's just it's got a higher learning curve, but it's arguably better for mission critical applications. So depending on what you're building and your needs as a developer, it's probably gonna have an impact on your decision for what blockchain you want to build on. So,
and these are all public blockchains that you said, because I don't think a lot of people understand there's these 2 different concepts, the public and private. Could you talk around that? Does it scare you, private blockchains? Or
I see a private blockchain as basically being a database. It's not really valuable. I think it's kind of like it's kind of a stepping stone to, or like a way to show.
But what?
So like parties from the whole world that they're like, this is kind of like blockchains work. This is how they work, and eventually privacy tools will come on board. Like, so for example, ZK-SNARKs, which is the core innovation behind Zcash, which allows for privacy there. That technology is being implemented on Ethereum. So we will see privacy privacy mechanisms implemented on other blockchains that are public blockchains, but they can allow for.
So is this the concept of nested permissions, or is this, which is you see maybe the information is there, but you don't get to see what it is, or is that something different?
Yes, ZK-SNARKs, I don't want to try to go into the technicals of how they actually work, for example, but yeah, they kind of allow you to prove something without actually your hand.
I dipped around investigating a business idea once, so I kind of half get bits of it, and I was getting it. So, all right, so when people talk about privacy and everything being public on the blockchain, it's not going to be like everyone's going to find out that your monthly subscription to 15 porn sites, like that could be hidden, as they're not going to know.
Yeah,
I actually bought you a present at this store or something.
There's going to be privacy mechanism built on top of public blockchains that allow for public blockchains, the underlying blockchain, to be utilized for something that might need more privacy. Okay,
all right, that's cool. The conversation I was having with Julian a bit earlier, he was talking about how he almost sees like they're becoming, because of net neutrality, like this separate blockchain internet. Do you see that as, you know, do you see this concept of the internet being something very, and actually another conversation we had with a guy I think who introduced us, Jerry, was like, do we even have what people might call the internet in 100 years now? Is blockchain what the real internet is going to be? Do you see that kind of fundamental level of shift, or is that hype?
I think the whole net neutrality thing has been kind of overblown. I don't really see a massive adverse change coming to the internet because of this repeal. But that's all to be seen. There's definitely lots of projects in the space working on stuff. Orchid Protocol is an example. I think they are specifically working on like an alternative to ISPs. But yeah, mesh networks are interesting. There's lots of, I mean, the internet's definitely going to evolve. IPFS is a super important project in the space. We actually leverage IPFS with our marketplaces.
And there's one called Golem, isn't there, which sounds a bit like the software they invented in Silicon Valley on HBI.
Yeah, Golem is kind of a distributed computing platform. Yeah, that's a very ambitious and complex project, but yeah, there's tons of different people working on exciting stuff and like around this issue. I'm not technical enough to.
Okay, no, and look, nor am I. And I'm trying to get around it. But I'm trying to get my head around the tech enough to be able to explain and understand like these bigger questions. So, do you know what? I've got two big questions here. What scares you? What excites you? In whichever order. Like, if you think, you've just watched an episode of Black Mirror on Netflix, and then you go into your day job or you open up your laptop. What's the shit that scares you? Or worries you, or gives you pause to like, oh, we should keep an eye out on that?
Well, like backtracking to Aragon, Aragon kind of introduces the concept of unstoppable organizations. You have an organization, it's on the blockchain, no one can really shut it down. That may or may not be a good thing. You can think of lots of examples where that would be a really bad thing, actually. So yeah, I think just as technology continues to advance exponentially, we have to be keen of doing so in socially responsible manners. Yeah, I think there's lots of the softwares. I mean, most of the software is open source these days. They can be used for bad purposes. So yeah, I think just being aware of that and thinking.
I'll tell you what, that's part of the motivation of the film, because do you know, I was listening to a podcast with this Aussie kid or Aussie guy. He was talking about all this exciting tech and what it could do. So my parents are refugees. that grew up, they basically couldn't go back to Poland because of communism, and I'd hear all these horror stories about in-laws that would be forced to spy on other people, and and I hear some stuff around blockchain, and it's like, oh, it can do awesome, beautiful things, but it could also be a tool as an authoritarian state. And I guess what scared me was the fact that I don't think people understood what was going on. So I don't want to scare people, but I also want to say, just keep an eye out on what's going on, be aware of what's going on, because it could go, if everything becomes a private blockchain, then these beautiful benefits, won't necessarily come across. So,
yeah, exactly. And I think there's been talk of, I think Venezuela actually was looking at doing a private chain and private digital currency for the country, which, yeah, that's taking the potential benefits of digital cash and really just maximizing the surveillance aspects of it, and the control over the money, just like the country already has. Which
yeah, I think Venezuela's on my hit list. I might need to go and talk to someone. If you have any connections in Venezuela that know that neighborhood, I'd love to know the tech scene there. I'd love to find out. But yeah, that's interesting. That's one of the things that scared me, was money, where people can see where you spend your money or how you spend your money, or do certain stores only accept money of...
I think there's been, with India and a couple other countries this year, we've already seen a push to sort of outlaw cash, just because digital money can be easily traced. So it's in government's best interest to have money being transmitted digitally. If it's all on a blockchain, and if it's all if everyone's ID can be tied back to a personal to like an actual person, and you can kind of just follow that one point of the blockchain, follow the money, the movement of the money, and yeah, you can kind of...
So look, you're also, like, you've got this big co-op idea, and a lot of people are worried about the future of jobs and the future of money. Do you have any thoughts around UBI, universal basic income, or how people are going to be earning a living in a few years, or are you just doing your thing?
I can't say I have strong thoughts on UBI.
Okay, no, that's cool. Some people see it as interrelated, and some people don't. So look, what excites you? Is it your organization getting bigger? Is it other stuff happening around blockchain that excites you? Or AI or big data?
Our organization, of course, definitely excites me. But in terms of like what's going to be the most exciting stuff over the next couple of years in this space, I think the scalability issues or approaches, which they are kind of, it's just like technical stuff that's could be arguably kind of boring, but it's going to be really interesting to see which implementation or approach to that really works. You have lots of different camps trying different versions of proof of stake within Ethereum itself. I know both there's been Vitalik and Vlad both have their own versions of how Casper or proof of stake should ideally work. Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting to see how all that plays out, and if proof of stake really can replace proof of work. If it can, I think that has massive implications both.
So explain to me conceptually, I think I understand proof of stake versus proof of work, but could you explain that in like layman terms?
So proof of work, you're really just using hashing algorithms, which requires a lot of computing power to... Which is the issue about lots of, there's Ethereum or Bitcoin is like a whole nuclear power factory just powering it live. Exactly. It's just the network is becoming extremely electricity or power consumptive, and that's only going to continue to grow exponentially. So Wasn't that the Matrix? Didn't the computers need humans for the power to power themselves? Sorry. Completely stupid aside. I interrupted a really serious train of thought, so I apologize. But yeah, so proof of work is just the idea that you actually need to prove that you're putting in this work, and when we're referring to work here, it's normally just computing power when the work is electricity spent. So it's proof of just that it's coming more proof of electricity burn. So yeah, it's not necessarily a useful use of resources. So proof of stake is the idea that you kind of artificially do this by having people lock up some of their stake in the tokens to provide security for the network. And to do that, they have a chance to earn small fees for verifying transactions, but they're staking and risking that if they verify transactions incorrectly, they're going to lose their stake. So
you know, it's a different way of earning money as an individual, earning a living. I'm not trying to make out like it's all greed, that there's more risk but more reward moving forward, or not?
I don't know if I would say that. It's hard to
No, okay, all right. I'm just trying to get. I'm not trying to lead you anywhere. So I'm just trying to get my head around it, because look, I'm reading all this stuff about people being very dynamic and earning money, but also realize that, you know, most people are about their families and, you know, feeding their families, making sure there's food on the table. So I kind of wonder, you know, how they're going to, you know, how it's going to stratify. And I'm trying to get my head around it, and I probably need to get my thoughts together a little bit more before I carry on down that round of thought. A lot of people talk. Sorry.
Somewhat along those lines. Have you seen the Pineapple Fund?
No. Tell me about that.
It was announced earlier this week. Just some anonymous early Bitcoin holder. Let me see if I can find the website. I think it's just pineapplefund.org.
Okay.
A anonymous Bitcoin holder announced they were going to donate $86 million of Bitcoin to charity. We started with, let's see, they've already got 8 that they've donated.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
So they donated $1 million to, and then one $500K and one $50K. But
wow, I think everybody's blinded by the kind of ICO madness to look at anything else that's going on in around blockchain and AI right now. So we're calling this, because it's blockchain and AI and big data, we're calling it fourth industrial revolution. Do you think that's hype? Do you think we really are in a transformative period right now in terms of business finance?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think blockchain will have impact like on par with the internet, essentially.
And it different, better, worse, scary, something that's going to play itself out without interference, something we need to keep an eye on?
It's kind of like an unstoppable force at this point.
Okay.
Kind of like,
so the train's rolling. It's just a matter of like holding on to it and making sure it.
The train's rolling. Yeah, some people might try to get on the tracks and stop it. They're probably gonna get plowed over. But yeah,
yeah. No, I think also you're right. And I think what's really interesting for me is this is happening outside existing power structures. You know, to me it feels like the internet revolution, or the internet, whatever you want to call it, happened because of VCs and money. And actually everything happening in blockchain doesn't cost a lot of money. It's all open source software. It's people not going to VCs or private equity call, just sitting by the laptop coding.
Yeah.
Making money of cryptocurrency. It's a very different,
although
hippie.
This past year it's been very, very much so. Maybe not for the right reasons about the money though with the ICOs. I feel like with like over $4 billion raised now from crowd sales. So yeah, that's been, and it's like it shows a use case of blockchain technology in itself, a way to do crowdfunding or fundraising in a arguably better way, a more efficient manner.
Okay, that's good. I'm excited for more of your zones to launch. You want to start using them and getting in there, but hopefully, I know you guys are gonna build it well. You guys have got a really good reputation. Who else do you think is interesting? Who else do you think I should be researching or looking at?
So Aragon, of course, we're big fans of.
Okay, so talking to those guys.
I think the Decentraland's a cool project.
Which one?
Decentraland.
Okay. Oh yeah. You're building on your platform, right?
Yep. Bloom Protocol. That's another cool project. Keep Network. Keep, this KEEP.network is their website. going back to the whole private versus public blockchain things and how.
Yeah, is this something that you use for data minimization, which is a concept I've been exploring, where you keep your data in one pot and only give out the data that is needed for a service?
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly how I would describe keep.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Data locker though, basically. Okay. Keep your shit safe.
Yeah. What other projects are?
Or not even projects. What are you excited? Is there anything around like digital ID or governance or voting that you would like to see happen? You know, outside maybe commercial.
Token curated registries is just a really interesting design pattern. I think one that we're going to see lots of projects implement this year or over the course of the next year. We're doing that with our district registry. AdChain is doing that with their ad fraud registry, essentially. Yeah, there's quite a few other projects who I know are looking at using a similar pattern. So that's going to be one of, well, there's been lots of talk of decentralized governance, and I feel like a token curated registry is a very basic form of governance and like one of the simplest to enact at scale. So it'll be interesting to see that implemented this year. I think that will. Cool.
All right. That's been awesome. You've been, it's been good to talk to you and good to get a different take on where things are. And I'm sorry if I asked some stupid questions, but do you know, all the other people I've interviewed so far, I kind of got what they were doing a bit more. And you're definitely like a little fuzzier, and you've made it clearer. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure.